Welcome everyone to another episode of Kindling the Hearthfire. How is everyone? I hope everyone is having a good year so far. I know I am. I had a wonderful time celebrating the season with my Grove mates, and I hope everyone else is having a wonderful beginning to this brand new season. Right now, you can find our podcast on Stitcher, iTunes, Podbean, and on Patreon. I would appreciate any and all reviews on iTunes because it just makes it easier for people to find us on there. Go on and check us out there and maybe even help support the podcast on Patreon. All websites will be listed with links in the show notes as per usual, and all music used in this podcast belongs to their respective authors and no one else. Alright, so now on to the rest of the podcast. Last time we were discussing traditions popular in the Welsh hearth and had a recipe for some lovely fudge. This time around we are going to be discussing Irish traditions celebrated during this time of year. Now, the Irish and Welsh hearth cultures are the ones that I most identify with. So, in a way, coming back to them is like coming home for me, especially in a time of year that is very much about new beginnings, hearth, and the home. Imbolc literally means bag of butter in Gaelic, which makes sense when you consider what this time of year meant to a lot of farmers and just common people living in the Irish countryside for centuries and maybe even today. Bridget is a popular goddess/saint. Even today in modern Ireland, but she has been around since time immemorial, it seems, in one form or another. Even the Catholic Church couldn't get rid of her. She was so popular they had to make her a saint. Otherwise, people probably would have revolted. But anyway, candle making and bringing light into the home after the dark of the year was past are popular and practical pastimes for this time of year. Try saying that 5 times fast. Which is the key in many traditions associated with Bridget in particular. In Irish traditions, the farmer's calendar starts on February 1st, or Bridget's Day, because this is when the cold and treacherous winter weather was starting to abate, and the storms of winter would begin to pass Ireland by, or lessen in severity. It's worth mentioning that during Lunasa, back in Lunasa, offerings were made to avoid winter storms that were prevalent during the harvest time in Ireland, and Bridget herself promised better weather after her day had passed. Every second day fine, from my own day onward, are her words. Ironically, it's actually not a good omen, weather-wise or any otherwise, if it's a brilliant day on Bridget's Day itself. People would take it as a sign that more bad storms were on their way. Much like the tradition of seeing a groundhog, seeing his shadow, which means 6 more weeks of winter. A rainy February was said to mean a very good summer. In fishing villages, especially near Galway Bay, it is a tradition, and has been for a long time, to use the spring tide to their advantage by harvesting seaweed for the fertilization of crops. It was also a tradition to collect live sea creatures, mostly clams, limpets, or periwinkles, to place in the corners of the home for luck in fishing for the next season. Another tradition was the prohibition of certain kinds of work for the day. Mostly those associated with the turning of a wheel, such as moving a cart, milling, or spinning. In some localities, it was smithing and plowing that would be prohibited. It kind of depended on where you were, what exactly was prohibited, but there were lots of prohibitions for this time of year or this day in honor of Bridget and the arts and crafts and the areas that she was a part of. It is also believed that Bridget herself would come and visit to give blessing to the household and their animals. Bridget's crosses were hung over the threshold, and cakes were left out to welcome her in. In a few places in County Leitrim, children used remnants left over from the creation of the crosses to make decoration that we placed beside them. Thin board was used, and a paste made of boiled potatoes, there you go with the potatoes and the Irish again, the boiled potato water, it would become kind of a paste. And they would use this paste to paste the pieces of the rushes to the board in shapes of the moon, sun, and the stars. And then these would be placed outside alongside the cakes, alongside the bridges, crosses, in the doorways and windows and things of that nature. Many other wonderful traditions happen during this time of year in Ireland. I wonder which ones will be practiced in our neck of the woods. Next up, we have a wonderful recipe for you to try this time of year, with one that I have loved making for many years. A lavender, mint, and lemon butter cookie recipe. I love these, and even my mother was very surprised to note that she did as well, even if she disliked lavender and most other things. Okay, so the lavender, lemon, and mint shortbread cookies. They take about 8 minutes to bake, and this particular batch makes about 60 individual cookies, and they're small cookies. That's why they make 60. But you can make them bigger or smaller as much as you like. Just be aware that the baking time may vary depending on how thick your cookie is. Alright, and I'm sorry to say that the ingredients are actually listed in grams, especially the butter and the confectioner's sugar. So there are many conversion tools you can use to convert these into measurements that you can actually use. But here's the recipe as is written. The ingredients for this recipe: you have 250 grams unsalted butter at room temperature, 250 grams confectioner's sugar, 1 large egg, 1 tablespoon lemon zest, half teaspoon citrus or vanilla essence, depending on your taste. I usually use the citrus because I really like the heavy lemon flavor. And I think the vanilla actually makes it a little bit too sweet for my taste. 1.5 tablespoon dried lavender, and make sure that it is food quality lavender that you buy in the stores, or if you really want to get into it, you have a lavender tree that you know exactly where everything has been and how clean they are. Use that for this recipe. You can also get them in many health food stores, and you make sure they're food quality, not aromatherapy quality. Just put that in there. And the same is true for the tablespoon of dried mint, crumbled up as well. I'll make sure it's food quality, and if you have a plant of your own, more power to you. Okay, and 1/8 teaspoon coarse sea salt. And then 375 grams all-purpose flour. And this recipe actually, in the original way they did it, they actually are asking for 60 grams white or dark chocolate chips, or both mixed. I don't put the chocolate chips in there. I just think it doesn't really add much to the cookie, and it actually takes away from the minty, lemony, lavendery taste of the cookie. But you can add them if you like, because that is in the original recipe if you would like to put it in there. Alright. So on to the actual recipe. The directions are: you put the butter and confectioner's sugar in a mixer bowl and cream them for a couple minutes until everything's well combined, but not too much, so that you're over mixing them. At this point, you add the egg and the citrus essence and cream them until they're very light and fluffy. Mix in the lavender, lemon zest, mint, and salt with the flour, and mix into the batter gradually until well blended the middle. So you're basically just separating the dry with the wet ingredients. But anyway, and once you've got them well blended, you make 2 rolls and wrap them in cling film. Refrigerate for at least half an hour, so you can get the butter to be really, really hard, so they're a little bit less malleable. Preheat oven to 180 degrees Celsius. Once again, get those conversions out. This is a recipe I got off of a Canadian website. So anyway, with a sharp knife, cut about 1/2 inch slices and place them on a baking tin lined with parchment paper. Parchment paper is optional. Just saying. refrigerate again for 15 minutes. After you've got them out of the refrigerator, then you will then put them into the oven and bake them for 8 to 10 minutes or until they're slightly browned around the edges. Keep an eye on these ones. They burn really easy. There's lots of butter and lots of sugar in there, so they burn really easy. Okay, once they're done with that, you cool them for a few minutes on the baking sheets and then transfer them to wire racks to cool completely. And after you're done, you can store them into an airtight container. Okay. So yeah, enjoy your cookies. They are lovely, really nice and light. The lavender actually gets a little bit muted by everything else that's in there, but they complement each other very, very nicely. And enjoy these for your spring celebration, as I'm going to. Hope you enjoy them as much as I do. Next up, we have our community calendar. And just for reference, if you would like your event listed, send the show an email or message us on Facebook, and we'll try to get you in there. Just for reference's sake, the official date for Imbolc, or Brigatania, cross quarter, is Monday, February 4th at 5:10 a.m. Eastern Time. And the vernal equinox begins on March 20th, as per usual. It's a Wednesday at 5:58 p.m. EDT. Okay, and now on to the festivals that are coming up in the next couple months. Next up, the first one that's coming up is a PantheaCon, one I absolutely love and will be going to. And I will actually be having ribbons for PantheaCon if I can get things straightened out with the printing press. But this PantheaCon is a pan-pagan convention, and it runs from February 15th to the 18th this year. It is once again at the Doubletree Hotel in San Jose, California, and if you want more information, and they've got the schedule up and everything like that, check out their website, which is pantheacon.com, and there'll be links in the show notes once again, so you don't have to spell all these strange words that are in a lot of these websites. Alright, so the next one is going to be Convocation, which is another pan-pagan convention. It actually starts on February 21st and goes to the 24th this year. And it will be at the Dearborn Detroit Doubletree by Hilton. And once again, I will be giving you the sites in the show notes, so I won't bother even trying to spell this out because there's a lot of gibberish in this one. So links will be in the show notes for their website if you want more information on what's going on, where it is, and how to get registered. Alright, and the last one for this time around is PaganiCon, and it is also a pan-pagan convention. And it actually runs March 22nd through the 24th this year. And it also will be at a Doubletree hotel, the Doubletree Park Place in St. Louis Park, Minnesota. And their website is pretty simple, but once again, I'll be putting links in the show notes. It is at paganicon.org, and you can go there to find out what the schedule, who's going to be there, how to get there, what airports are nearby, things of that nature. Alright, so that's it for the community calendar. Okay, and last but not least, we have our book review. We're back to the nonfiction today with Sacred Gifts, Reciprocity with the Gods by Reverend Kirk Thomas, a former Archdruid of ADF. This book was great to read, and I already have used it as a reference for ritual and my personal practice. It's written in a kind of college essay type style, but not too academic that you need a thesaurus and dictionary on hand just to get through it. I have it on Kindle, which is really convenient, especially when traveling or when I need to search for a term. Anyway, I would like to say this is definitely a book to keep on your shelf, especially if you are interested in hospitality, offerings, or sacrifice in pagan practice. It's full of information, so I will be using it as a reference for a very long time to come, so it's very rereadable. You'll always be getting new information out of it, and there's lots of good stuff in it. It's not quite a conversational style of writing, but as I've said before, it's not so academic that you will get headaches trying to unravel its meaning, so it's very, very readable. And last but not least, its bibliography is extensive, with references that go back as far as the 1600s, and come forward as recent as the as 200 as two. Let's read this one. And last but not least, its bibliography is extensive, with references as far back as the 1600s and as recent as 2014. The book was published in 2015. So it definitely belongs on my shelf, and it will remain on my shelf for a long time to come. And if you want to pick it up, it's available in most retail locations, including Barnes & Noble and Amazon, and on Kindle. All right. Wrapping up, I would like to again thank Bonnie Landry, who you heard in the intro with her performance of Fire Burn Bright, written by our own Emerald. We're getting ready to put together the next podcast here at Kindling the Hearthfire. And if you have any ideas, celebrations, poems, songs, invocations, or anything else that you would like to hear included in the podcast, please send them to kindlingthehearthfire@gmail.com. And if you just want to leave us a comment on how you like the podcast, that's also the best way to get a hold of me, is through that email. And also on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram. I'm also on YouTube. Several other places that I'm at. But that's the main one, that email, which is, again, kindlingthehearthfire, all one word, @gmail.com. I would also love to see your pictures of your celebrations. Either post them to the Facebook group or on Instagram with the hashtag KTH. Next time we are going to be discussing Ostara. Deadline for submissions for the next podcast is February 28th, the last day of February. And tune in for another episode of Kindling the Hearthfire. We will be again having a pre-show the hour before, so tune in on Blog Talk Radio for that, and call in if you would like to join the conversation. We will be discussing our plans for the spring equinox and what we have done in the past. Should be fun. You can find our podcast on Stitcher, iTunes, Podbean, Google Play, YouTube, Patreon, Instagram, and Facebook. I would also like to say we have a new group on Facebook for a prayer request group, if you would like to join that and put your prayer requests on that group, or if you would like someone to put them on there for you, like an anonymous prayer, once again, send me an email at kindlingthehearthfire@gmail.com. May you be well, and may you continue to pray with a good fire.